The strategic landscape of the 21st century demands revolutionary approaches to national defense, prompting Prime Minister Narendra Modi's highly anticipated visit to Israel. This diplomatic engagement elevates the bilateral relationship to a special strategic partnership, focusing heavily on advanced technology transfers across multiple defense sectors. The Iron Beam, Israel's cutting edge directed energy weapon system, features as a highly significant component of these discussions, complementing a vast array of strategic agreements. Modern conflicts feature saturation attacks utilizing swarms of extremely cheap loitering munitions and rockets, overwhelming traditional kinetic air defense networks. India requires a radical shift in engagement economics to secure its vast airspace, making the acquisition of light speed interception technology an absolute imperative. A glance across India's western border provides a highly amusing contrast in strategic priorities. While New Delhi negotiates the acquisition of continuous photon based air shields driven by quantum mechanics, the military establishment in Rawalpindi focuses exclusively on acquiring luxury aviation assets. General Asim Munir recently secured a brand new $70 million Gulfstream G600 for his personal use, ensuring maximum comfort during highly strategic airborne retreats. This boundless generosity extends to the civilian leadership, with a plush 19-seater luxury private jet finding its way to Punjab Chief Minister Maryam Nawaz. Strategic depth takes on a highly literal meaning when Maryam's subterranean survival bunker sits just a convenient 30-minute luxury flight away, bypassing the harsh terrestrial realities faced by the general populace. The Pakistani military elite secures absolute luxury air superiority for their personal commutes, leaving their regular infantry to polish decades old obsolete hardware while staring enviously at the sky. Transitioning from the Gulfstream generals, the Iron Beam represents a profound triumph of applied quantum mechanics, solid state physics, and advanced thermodynamics. The system operates fundamentally as a high energy solid state fiber laser, advancing beyond the massive building sized chemical lasers of the past century. Israeli engineers achieved historic compactness by utilizing flexible optical fibers. The genesis of this immense destructive power begins at the microscopic level within the semiconductor pump diodes. The construction of these pump diodes relies on indium gallium arsenide quantum well structures. Within these microscopic semiconductor sandwiches, electrons inhabit a high energy conduction band, separated from a low energy valence band by a strict quantum band gap. Think of this band gap as a towering cliff face. Injecting immense electrical current from the system's alternators acts as a high speed elevator, hauling trillions of electrons from the valley floor directly to the summit. As these electrons plunge back off the cliff into the valence band below, they undergo radiative recombination, shedding their excess energy by spawning pure photons. The precise molecular engineering of the indium gallium arsenide lattice dictates that these emitted photons vibrate at exactly 976 nanometers, falling squarely within the near infrared spectrum. These pump photons blast into the cladding of the primary amplification fibers. Within the weapon's core generator, manufacturers coil miles of these specialized optical fibers onto highly compact internal spools, saving immense amounts of physical space. These fibers feature a core doped to the rare earth lanthanides, primarily ytterbium ions suspended within a pure silica glass matrix. The silica cladding surrounding this doped core acts exactly like a perfectly mirrored hallway. When you throw a tennis ball hard down a narrow hallway, it bounces continuously off the walls, traveling forward indefinitely. The cladding traps the pump light through total internal reflection, forcing the photons to repeatedly intersect the central core. The ytterbium ions absorb these pump photons, pushing their outermost electrons from a stable ground state into a highly excited energy orbital within the Stark level manifold, creating a quantum state known as population inversion. To understand this quantum state, imagine a massive sports stadium where every spectator sits quietly in their seat, representing the ground state. The pump diodes act like an electrifying music track playing over the loudspeakers, prompting every single person in the stadium to stand up, brimming with stored energy, waiting for the precise signal to release it. As these highly charged electrons drop back down the Stark levels to their baseline energy state, they release photons of a specific near infrared wavelength. precisely 1064 nanometers, through a process called stimulated emission. Returning to the stadium analogy, imagine one person suddenly sitting down and clapping loudly. This single action triggers a chain reaction where the entire standing crowd simultaneously sits and claps in perfect synchronized unison, generating a massive coherent wave of acoustic energy. A master oscillator power amplifier configuration manages this massive optical energy generation. A low power seed laser generates the initial perfect coherent pulse of light, acting as that first clapping spectator. This seed pulse travels through successive stages of the ytterbium doped amplification fibers, triggering the excited ions to release their stored energy in perfect phase, identical polarization, and exact alignment with the passing electromagnetic wave. This cascading effect exponentially amplifies the optical power while maintaining absolute coherence. Pushing such massive optical power through a hair thin glass fiber triggers severe high intensity optical effects, primarily stimulated Brillouin scattering. In this chaotic phenomenon, the intense light physically squeezes the glass through electrostriction. Imagine shouting so loudly inside a narrow, icy canyon that your voice creates physical shock waves, triggering an avalanche that instantly blocks the canyon and reflects the sound violently back at you. The intense light creates acoustic shock waves within the glass itself, causing the fiber to act like an acoustic mirror and reflecting the laser energy backwards, instantly destroying the primary oscillator. Israeli engineers bypassed this catastrophic failure by utilizing large mode area photonic crystal fibers. These specialized fibers feature a honeycomb structure of microscopic air holes running entirely along their length. This intricate microstructure resembles bundling dozens of small garden hoses together rather than using one massive high pressure fire hose. It forces the light to spread out evenly across a much wider core area, drastically reducing the peak optical intensity and entirely bypassing the acoustic reflection threshold, ensuring the safe forward propagation of the beam. Generating a lethal beam requires combining the output of dozens of these individual fiber amplifiers. The system utilizes spectral beam combining to achieve this feat within a remarkably tiny footprint. By slightly varying the wavelength of each fiber module by fractions of a nanometer, engineers use highly specialized diffraction gratings to bend and merge these separate beams into a single, unified column of light exiting the weapon's aperture. This process resembles aiming a dozen different colored water hoses at a specialized glass prism, which perfectly merges the individual streams into one blindingly powerful unified fire hose of light. This combined beam exceeds 100 kilowatts of continuous optical power. Upon firing, this concentrate electromagnetic energy travels at 300,000 kilometers per second, ensuring the target intercepts the beam the instant the firing sequence initiates. The fundamental laws of physics guarantee immediate target engagement. Delivering focused light through the chaotic medium of the Earth's atmosphere presents immense thermodynamic hurdles. The primary obstacle manifests as thermal blooming. As the high energy laser travels, air molecules, specific aerosols, and trace amounts of water vapor and carbon dioxide absorb a tiny fraction of the photon energy. This absorption rapidly heats the air column directly within the beam's path. The heated air expands, causing a localized drop in atmospheric density and altering the refractive index of the gas. This density gradient acts precisely like a diverging lens, causing the tightly focused laser to spread out and lose its destructive intensity before reaching the target. To visualize thermal blooming, observe the air directly above a hot barbecue grill or a toaster oven. The intense heat causes the background image to warp, shimmer, and blur as the light bends through the varying air densities. The weapon essentially creates this same shimmering mirage within its own flight path, threatening to blur its own destructive focal point. Atmosphere turbulence, characterized by pockets of air swirling at different temperatures and densities, randomly refracts the beam, creating a twinkling effect that scatters the focal point further. The ion beam counters these severe physical limitations through the deployment of highly advanced adaptive optics coupled with an intricate multi-sensor targeting suite. The engagement sequence begins with an active electronically scanned array radar identifying the incoming threat from miles away. The system hands the coordinates over to a highly precise dual-band electro-optical and infrared tracking camera system. These cameras utilize both mid-wave and long-wave infrared sensors, allowing the computer to perfectly contrast the hot engine exhaust of a drone against the cold upper atmosphere or the warm desert ground clutter. Once visually locked, a low-power tracking laser constantly illuminates the target and reflects light back to the weapon sensors. A Shack-Hartmann wavefront sensor intercepts this returning light, analyzing the exact phase distortions caused by the atmospheric turbulence and thermal blooming along the specific flight path. The Shack-Hartmann sensor relies on an array of microscopic lenslets that focus the returning light onto a digital detector, measuring the exact displacement of the focal spots to calculate the wavefront aberration. A high-speed targeting computer processes this distortion data thousands of times per second. It sends electrical commands to a deformable mirror positioned directly in the main laser's optical path. This mirror features hundreds of microscopic piezoelectric actuators beneath its transmission, maximizing reflective surface. These actuators physically push and pull the mirror's surface, altering its shape by mere micrometers to perfectly invert the atmospheric distorted physical ripple to create perfect optical clarity. When the 100 kilowatt destruction beam reflects off this constantly rippling mirror, it enters the atmosphere pre-distorted. As the beam travels through the turbulent air, the atmospheric aberration perfectly cancels out the mirror's pre-distortion, resulting in a microscopic razor-specific heat capacity and thermal diffusivity. When engaging aerospace alloys, the intense heat rapidly overcomes the material's latent heat of fusion. A microscopic melt pool forms almost instantly. The extreme temperature gradients within this melt pool induce violent Marangoni convection currents. This phenomenon functions identically to heating a thick bowl of soup on a high stove flame. The hottest liquid violently pushes outward from the center, churning the material and drastically accelerating the melting process. This intense heat compromises the structural integrity of the thread within mere seconds. Aluminum and titanium aerospace alloys experience severe thermal softening, entirely losing tensile strength. For fixed-wing drones, the aerodynamic surfaces warp and melt under the asymmetric drag, causing the vehicle to experience immediate catastrophic stall and plummet from the sky. For explosive projectiles, the neutralization mechanics prove even more spectacular. The focused beam essentially acts as an absolute thermal drill. Instantly vaporizes the surface, creating a superheated cloud of ionized gas known as a plasma plume. Picture shining a high-powered flashlight into a dense cloud of smoke created by your own campfire. The smoke absorbs and scatters the light, protecting whatever sits behind it. The ion beam overcomes this plasma shielding by rapidly modulating its continuous wave output, creating microscopic pauses that allow the plasma cloud to dissipate in the wind before striking the exposed surface again with fresh photons. The heat penetrates the steel outer casing of a mortar or rocket and rapidly conducts into the internal high explosive payload, such as RDX or Composition B. The true revolutionary aspect of this directed energy technology lies in its profound cost per engagement ratio. Traditional air defense heavily relies on sophisticated kinetic interceptors, such as the highly agile Tamiya missiles utilized by the Iron Dome system. Manufacturing and firing a single Tamiya missile consumes roughly $50,000. Adversaries frequently launch massive swarms of crude garage-built rockets or commercial off-the-shelf drones assembled for a mere few $100s. This severe economic asymmetry drains national defense budgets rapidly during sustained conflict. The ion beam alters this financial dynamic completely. Generating the photon stream requires only a brief burst of electrical power. Calculating the cost of the diesel fuel consumed by the generators brings the operational cost $5 per interception. This Israeli technology will seamlessly merge with India's indigenous Project Akashtia air defense network. Akashtia triggers the laser for short-range clear-weather drone swarms and simultaneously launches Barak-8 or S-400 missiles for distant high-altitude ballistic threats, ensuring absolute airspace dominance. The seamless transmission of this targeting data relies entirely on indigenous software-defined radios utilizing the high-bandwidth operational data link. These encrypted frequency hopping communication channels guarantee millisecond latency between the radar detecting a threat and the laser firing its beam, cementing the entire network's light speed reaction time. India brings its own formidable directed energy research to the table, transforming this diplomatic engagement into a true collaborative scientific exchange. The Defense Research and Development Organization actively operates the Durga 2 program, an acronym for Directionally Unrestricted Ray Gun Array. Durga 2 functions as a lightweight 100 kilowatt directed energy weapon, entirely mirroring the thermal destruction capabilities of the Israeli system. Access to Israel's field tested Iron Beam data significantly accelerates the final deployment phases of Durga 2. By studying the atmospheric compensation algorithms and thermal cooling mechanisms perfected in actual combat scenarios, Indian scientists bypass years of theoretical modeling and move directly to frontline deployment, scaling the technology for integration onto mechanized infantry vehicles and naval destroyers. Mounting a 100 kilowatt directed energy weapon onto the chassis of a T-90 Bhishma tank or a Kalyani M4 armored vehicle demands absolute mastery of size, weight, power, and cost parameters. Mobile laser systems face the tremendous challenge of generating massive electrical power while moving across hostile uneven terrain. Indian engineers solved this by directly coupling massive high output homopolar alternators to the vehicle's primary diesel drivetrain, utilizing kinetic flywheels to store rotational energy, turning the entire tank into a rolling power station. Furthermore, the intense vibrations of the diesel engine and the track treads threaten to shatter the delicate optical alignment of the fiber lasers. The Durga 2 program utilizes advanced active magnetic levitation mounts to isolate the entire optical bench from the vehicle's chassis. These magnetic dampeners read the incoming terrain vibrations and adjust their magnetic fields in real time, holding the laser generator perfectly stable while the tank races across the Thar desert. Beyond photon-based lasers, India possesses the Kali system, representing a completely different realm of physics applied to directed energy warfare. Developed by the Bhabha Atomic Research Center, the kiloampere linear injector operates as a massive pulsed power particle accelerator. The underlying physics differ vastly from the continuous solid-state fiber optics of the iron beam. Kali utilizes massive banks of capacitors arranged in a configuration known as a Marx generator, housed within massive tanks filled with sulfur hexafluoride gas to insulate the immense electrical pressure by acting as a highly effective dielectric medium. These capacitors charge in parallel using standard electrical power, storing immense amounts of static electricity. Imagine slowly filling 100 small buckets of water side by side from a garden hose. Upon triggering, perfectly timed spark gaps instantly connect the capacitors in series. This action resembles instantly pouring all 100 buckets into a single massive funnel. The system breaks down the dielectric resistance of the gas through a Townsend avalanche and multiplies the voltage to astronomical gigavolt levels in a fraction of a second. This massive electrical charge discharges through specialized Blumlein transmission lines which shape the raw energy into a perfectly square, nanosecond long pulse. This pulse slams into a field emission diode, violently stripping electrons from a cold cathode through explosive emission and accelerating them to speeds approaching the velocity of light. These relativistic electron beams carry terrifying amounts of kinetic energy. Upon leaving the accelerator ray, these high-speed electrons smash into a virtual cathode oscillator or Vikator. The sudden deceleration and oscillation of the electrons convert their kinetic energy into extreme high-energy electromagnetic radiation, specifically intense bursts of high-power microwaves and directed X-rays. These microwaves penetrate the target through two distinct attack vectors, scientifically categorized as front door and back door coupling. Front door coupling occurs when Kali's radiation perfectly matches the resonant frequency of the target's own radar or communication antennas. This method mimics grabbing an adversary's megaphone and shouting a deafening sound directly into their ear. The target's antenna unwittingly gathers the hostile microwave energy, funneling a catastrophic power surge directly into its most sensitive receiver circuits. Backdoor coupling relies on the brute force of the electromagnetic wave washing over the aircraft's fuselage. This attack vector resembles detonating a massive sonic boom outside a house, rattling the entire structure until every glass window shatters inward. Applying Maxwell's equations to the aircraft's geometry reveals that the waves locate microscopic gaps around the cockpit canopy, landing gear doors, and weapon bays, bleeding into the internal wire harnesses. The intense electromagnetic pulse couples with these wires, acting as miniature receiving antennas, and induces massive localized voltage spikes within the delicate microchips. This sudden surge causes immediate avalanche breakdown, instantly frying the solid-state guidance systems, communication arrays, and flight computers, rendering the vehicle a disabled inert piece of falling metal. Kelly attacks the electronic brain of the weapon, whereas the iron beam attacks the physical body. Combining these two methodologies gives India an exceptional dual-track neutralization capability. The synergy between Israel's operational combat experience and India's raw scientific momentum guarantees absolute dominance over the regional skies. The integration of continuous thermal lasers and pulsed electromagnetic weapons ensures any hostile projectile faces instantaneous light speed neutralization. The adversaries across the border remain thoroughly eclipsed in this technological arms race, heavily occupied with acquiring luxury aviation assets for their politicians while ignoring their increasingly porous airspace. The future of warfare belongs entirely to those wielding the fundamental forces of physics to build impenetrable energy shields, leaving the era of purely kinetic exchanges firmly behind. I want to extend my deepest gratitude to everyone supporting this channel through super thanks and exclusive channel memberships. I absolutely love reading each and every single comment you leave below the videos. We are gathering such an incredibly intelligent community of viewers here, and the sheer depth of your insights completely blows my mind away.